Hey guys, it's David from Team Apex, and today I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to myself. You may have known me for releasing a couple other videos on a couple of regional tops. I had a YCS top not too long ago. I don't think I released the video on YouTube, but nonetheless, I mean, I like to be creative with some of my decks, and I think I'm going to start releasing YouTube content a little bit more regularly, and do some deck profiles, review some cards, just kind of get into the scene a little bit more and make myself known on YouTube a little bit more. So for this video specifically, I'm going to be talking about ABCs. Because we're so far into the format, we're pretty much getting dominated by ABCs, metal foes, any variation of frogs, heroes, Paleozoics, whatnot. I just wanted to focus a little bit on ABC just because I had noticed that a couple months back when the deck was originally released, a lot of people in Montreal I knew were playing the deck, and they found that it grew the popularity rised really quickly, but then dropped really quickly as well, just because the deck was very linear. It revolved mostly around making Tsukiyomi, getting your letters, pitching everything to grave, banishing everything, you make Buster, you set your back rows, and your opponent pretty much can't play. Now, although that is good and it's a very strong deck, don't get me wrong, I personally don't really like decks that are linear and focus on doing the same thing every turn. And it's for that reason that even before ABC was out, I was testing a little bit on YGO Pro with a deck I like to call ABC Pendulum. It's a little bit like ABC with a little bit of a smaller engine, but it also focuses on pendulum summoning. So rather than only having Tsukiyomi to get your pieces to the grave, you can also pendulum summon your hand, you can make XYZs as well as Tsukiyomi, or you don't even have to make that. You can make Rafflesia, Dweller, and have Buster. With your pendulum scales, you make a lot more pluses in your turn, and it's very combo heavy, and it's really interesting, so take a look. Without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Alright, so for the deck, we have 2 A's, 2 B, 2 C. It's a little bit smaller than the regular engine, but I found that having 3 of each would brick way too often just because you don't want to draw all kinds of letters all the time. Like, the deck is very combo heavy and has a lot of pendulums, so the problem is if you draw a lot of letters and only one pendulum scale, like, you might end up breaking your hand. So by having like a reduced amount of letters, you're able to probably not break them as much, and usually you just want to kind of just search them off the field. So that's why we're running 2 of each. Then we're running a small gadget engine, so also 2 of each gadget. The gadgets are really important because, for a few reasons. Well, first of all, because pendulums aren't, well, my pendulum engine isn't exactly very good at making XYZs before pendulum summoning. Usually you'll need to pendulum summon your monsters and XYZ, but that's a problem because if they have back rows like Strike or Warning or Twin Twisters or whatnot, they will stop your pendulum summon, and that in turn would stop your entire play. So by having the gadgets, I'm able to XYZ before I pendulum summon, which could become pretty useful. And another reason they're really good is because they have an effect to special summon the other one when they're destroyed, and that's super important because we run things like Pendulum Sorcerer and because we run Sky Iris. So you can pop them, get their effect to special summon another one, so realistically it's a free pop. And you can like special summon another machine type monster from your hand, so you can further your combos. So they're very useful. So that's it for, well, also Max C, of course, because Max C is a great card. So that's it for the normal monsters. Then for the pendulums, we have Joker, 2 Sorcerer, Get Turtle, 2 Lizard Draw, Swin Cobra, the 2 Odd Eyes. Now, the reason we're running Swin Cobra is because he's a low-scale reptile, so he's searchable by Feral Imps. So we have Performer Pile Swin Cobra and Lizard Draw, so we have high-low that is searchable. And what's also really good about Swin Cobra, it doesn't come up very often, but if ever you are under Vanity's Lock and you are able to do damage to him directly, if it's in the scale, you're able to mill your opponent for 1 card. So it's a very obscure situation, but if ever it does come up, he does do that. So that's it for the monster lineup. Very small pendulum engine. You only want it realistically for turn 1 to be able to pendulum summon. Once your pendulum summon is done, usually by having Buster out, you just keep bringing back your letters, and you're able to like spam your opponent without pendulum summoning. Just having like access to them in the first turn is usually useful. If you still have your scales up after turn 1, usually like you've already won by then. So that's it for the monsters. For spells, 3 Pendulum Rising. Now this card I want to take a moment to talk about because this is the most important card in the entire deck, and the reason this deck works really well. Now, Pendulum Rising, for those of you who don't know, says that you send a monster from your field to your graveyard, and then you special summon a Pendulum monster from your deck that is the same level as that monster. So the reason this is really good is because all of your letters, all of your A, B, and C have an effect when they're sent from field to grave. So they trigger off being sent from Pendulum Rising, and your Pendulum Rising is going to bring Pendulum Sorcerer, and your Pendulum Sorcerer, when he special summon, pops 2 and adds 2. So the reason this is really good is because you're going to be popping things like, let's say, you go Pendulum Rising, you send your B, it goes to grave, and you bring Sorcerer. Sorcerer pops 2, it brings you 2 scales, so you're able to Pendulum Summon, and your B is going to add a letter, so you're probably going to be able to make Buster that turn as well. So that's really important to keep track of. So 3 Pendulum Rising, 3 Union Hanger, and 3 Terraforming standard. 1 Sky Iris because I have 3 Terraforming, and why not add another target? Sky Iris is really useful. You can pop letters if you need to. If you draw 2 Terraforming and you brick and you don't have another way of special summoning, you can pop a letter and add a scale if you're missing a scale, or you can pop a gadget, get its effect. You can do a lot of different things. And 1 Odd Eyes Fusion because Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon is pretty much Cyber Dragon Infinity. It's really easy to summon, and it goes really, really well going second. Because if your opponent overextends and has a lot of monsters on the board, if you Sky Iris, pop a Performer Pal in the scale or any Pendulum monster in your scale, search this, activate this, your opponent needs to respond to this, or else they're going to get blown out just because you have your Vortex Dragon and he's going to negate their cards. So they have to respond to this, and after they do that, then you can go activate Union Hanger and do your normal combos, and you can end up with Buster. So after they've negated this, you end up with Buster, and they have no idea what's going on, and you just start to destroy them pretty much. 2 Instant Fusion because it's a combo extender. Norden's really OP. 1 Regeki, 2 Twin Twister to get rid of your opponent's things if they happen to go first. And 1 Vanity's Emptiness, 1 Bottomless Trap Hole, and these are placeholders. I had lent my friend my dimensional barriers, but the reasoning was that the Bottomless Trap Hole would be for Rafflesia, and the 2 dimensional barriers would be really good because even if my opponent Twin Twisters me, you can chain the dimensional barriers and you can stall for a turn. So they're really useful traps just because all 4 traps are very, very live all the time, and even if you brick, you're able to stall under these cards, and usually your opponent can't play, and then obviously since you're playing ABC Engine, you're able to recur, draw cards, and usually you'll come back the turn after. So that's it for the main deck. It's 40 cards. So for the side deck, for the extra deck I should say, 3 Buster because you always end up making 3. You don't want to be playing any less because it comes up very often that you have to make 3 Busters, so that's going to stay at 3. 1 Norden for the Instant Fusion. 1 Vortex Dragon, it's pretty much your deck's Cyber Dragon Infinity, really, really good card, along with 2 other Odd Eyes. I don't usually summon them. I mean, this has come up once because I side Ghost Ogres, so these don't really come up, but you just send them with the Odd Eyes Fusion if you're going second, and you're able to summon this for free. So you have that, then you have your XYZ, so Diamond Direwolf, Rafflesia, Utopia, Utopia Lightning, Dweller, Feral Imps, Tsukiyomi, and Castel. So all these are pretty standard. Feral Imps is specific to this deck just because it searches both your high and your low scales, so it's really useful. So that's it for the deck. I don't have my side deck on me, but I'm going to get into a little bit of the combos just in case some of you don't understand how the deck really works right now. I'm just going to do some quick combos that some of you might not know. So a little thing in this deck you can do with just these 2 cards. So Union Hanger, you pretty much run 6 copies because you have the 3 Terraforming, and Pendulum Rising you're running at 3, so the combo comes up fairly frequently. Now what you're going to do with this combo is you go, let's just assume the other cards in your hand are irrelevant. So your first thing is you're going to go Union Hanger, you're going to add B. The reason you add B is because if somehow your combo gets stopped by Twin Twister or they have Ghost Ogre, whatnot, you want to do your B because if you're left with just the B, at least it's going to search you on the like when it dies, so it still does something, and that's the one that you want. So you normal summon the B, you equip the A with the Union Hanger, then you Pendulum Rising. So by Pendulum Rising, you send both of these to grave. This is going to go to grave. You're going to special summon Sorcerer. Now Sorcerer is going to activate, it's going to pop itself and the Union Hanger. Obviously, if you have more cards, you might want to pop something different. So Sorcerer is going to go to the extra deck, Union Hanger is going to go to grave, and you're also going to get the effects of A and B. So your Sorcerer is going to add a low scale and a high scale. Now you might be adding different cards depending on what your hand is. And your B is going to add the missing letter, and your A is going to add B. The reason you're going to activate A is because you're pretty much going to pendulum summon your hand. So by just adding the card, it's pretty much for free, and you're able to make maybe an extra XYZ. The B can equip and add cards. It just has a bunch of different uses because you can pendulum summon. So since you have, so pretty much you went +2 right now, and now you're going to add these in scale. The Turtle is going to draw you a card, but for the sake of example, I won't even draw it. You pendulum summon 3. Then we'll say, usually, like, I mean, you started with 2 cards, so realistically, if you had the other 3 cards, I'm sure you'd have more monsters, but let's just say for the sake of example, this is all you have. So you're going to equip the B to the C just because that's the situation we're given. We'll make something, let's say, Dweller. So B is going to activate. We'll add any letter, just something to discard with Buster. So we'll add, let's say, another C. Dweller effect, detach the C. Now you have ABC engraved, so you're going to banish all 3. Special summon Buster. Now, keep in mind that this field ended with just 2 cards. So you started with these 2, you end with 5 cards, and actually realistically there would be a 6th extra card from the Turtle, and you'd have your other 3 cards that you started in your opening hand. So already this is a really, really powerful board, and this is only with these 2 cards. There's so many other ways to do these combos, and there's so much more you can add to this combo just with the other 3 cards. If you have Instant Fusion, if you have Sky Iris, you can end up with, let's see, you can end up with Vortex Dragon, you can end up with Dweller, you can do Tsukiyomi if you happen to draw the gadgets and whatnot, you can draw extra cards, set more back row, you can do Rafflesia, you can just do, the combos are really endless. It's just, with these 2 cards, you make so many pluses and are able to do so many different plays that it's like, it's really overwhelming, and sometimes like you might be confused with how many options you have. So it's just important to keep track of where your resources are and what you're going to be doing with your turn. And yeah, so it's just a really interesting take on ABC, I find. And if this interests you, let me know. I'm gonna leave a description of the deck. I'm gonna leave a deck list in the description below. So if you like the deck, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. I'm gonna be doing more videos like this in the future. And thanks a lot.